This 7th generation Mustang isn't really designed for the future. Instead, it mainly references the past, carrying over its engine and platform from the previous model. Ford wants to give its best-selling sports car a final stay of execution before this model goes the way of all combustion things, hence the sharper exterior and more modern cabin. So it's still authentic, and if you loved it before, you'll love it now.
Thanks to this update, Ford's Mustang will be with us a little longer. Here we're going to take a look at the 7th generation model. Would you, could you, really justify one? Well, we're going to find out. So here we are at the end of an era. This 7th generation Ford Mustang will almost certainly be the last in this iconic model line of hairy-chested, muscle-bound US sports coupes and convertibles, which dates all the way back to 1964. Not to be confused, of course, with the all-electric Mustang Mach-E electric hatch, which stands for everything most Stang owners would abjectly hate. This real Mustang, in contrast, evokes a very different vibe. Picture one and you instantly imagine Steve McQueen, desert highways and the American dream, one which so many global buyers in the last decade have wanted to share, that this has become the world's best-selling sports car. Even so, investing in a new generation version of this normally aspirated V8 muscle car must have been difficult for the blue oval board to justify. Perhaps that's what lies behind the less publicised reality that this isn't really another generation of Mustang, more a far-reaching facelift of the previous coupe and convertible. The engines and suspension are basically the same as those of the previous S550 era fastback and cabrio models, which were launched back in 2015, as is the underlying platform. But Ford insists that significant changes have been made here. So just how different is this S650 era Mark 7 Mustang from what went before? Well, to find out, you're going to need the industry's most comprehensive review, the Car and Driving Motors. As ever with a Mustang, conformity is something this big Ford doesn't hold with, especially with the V8 engine you now have to have with this 7th generation model. In the modern era, almost any other power plant of this size would be turbocharged, and it certainly wouldn't be available with manual transmission. Here, the normally aspirated stick-shift formula feels deliciously old school, though does require a fair bit of effort on your part if rapid progress is to be maintained. Even when you're not flexing your right foot, there'll be a mixture of envy and disapproving comments from the pavement as you drive by. Give the huge hunk of Michigan metalwork beneath the bonnet full chat, and people simply stare. If you're unafraid to make a statement, or you simply don't care what people think, then this car will suit you perfectly. Ford says that this Mark 7 S650 era design is the most authentic and confidence-inspiring Mustang to drive yet. That seems a bit of a contradiction in terms, because an authentic, slightly unwieldy heavy-set Mustang experience hasn't been, in the past, one to deliver much confidence, at least not on damp tarmac. But the big sticky Pirelli P0 tyres seem reassuringly wide, the rears being meaty 20mm wider 275 section items. And there's a whole heap of stopping power with big Brembo 6-piston front calipers paired with 4-piston rear calipers. There aren't any significant changes to that classic 5-litre Coyote V8 up front, just a new dual cold air intake, so it puts out a similar level of power to before, 446 PS in the standard GT form and 453 PS in the alternative, more track-ready Dark Horse guise. Both variants offer a gutsy 540 Nm of torque, and will be ordered by most customers with a lightly updated version of the previous 10-speed torque converter automatic gearbox, via which the car gets to 62 miles an hour in 4.9 seconds in standard form, or 4.4 seconds in Dark Horse guise. Here though, as mentioned earlier, we're trying the car in 6-speed manual form, a transmission made by GetRag for this GT or by US specialist Tremec for the Dark Horse version. Using a stick shift pushes up the 0 to 62 mile an hour times a little to 5.3 seconds for the GT or 5.2 for the Dark Horse. But it doesn't affect top speed, which across the range remains restricted to 155 miles an hour. As usual, with a normally aspirated lump up front, not a lot happens below 3,500 RPM, and if you prod the throttle in too high a gear, there's no low-end turbo torque to help you out. So you'll have to click back through the box and find a smaller cog to spin. Fortunately, that's something that you might want to do anyway, thanks to a solidly slick gear shift embellished with rev matching technology that delivers smoother, faster downshifts accompanied by an emotive blip of the powerful engine. You'll enjoy overtaking, just pull out, power up, keep the revs buoyant, and torque builds instantly in company with a crescendo of noise from the valved sports exhaust hurling you towards the horizon. What's perhaps more surprising is just how much you might enjoy twistier roads in this Mustang. If you haven't tried one for a few years, you'll be hugely impressed by the precision with which this one can be flicked from lock to lock. That's not only due to the now faster steering rack, though that certainly plays its part. Credit also goes to the thick anti-roll bars, the carefully calibrated shock absorbers, and a rear suspension setup stiffened with a cross-axle joint to reduce the unwanted movement at each corner that would normally lead to body flex. Thanks to all this, in the dry at least, the back tyres are kept firmly in contact with the road virtually all of the time, hence excellent grip and traction as you power hard out of corners. To get the most from a Mustang experience, you'll need to get to grips with all the many drive options this car offers. The main drive modes, selectable via these steering wheel buttons, are normal, sport, track and drag strip, the latter for rubber smoking launches, all settings that additionally tweak the MagnaRide adaptive damping system, assuming your Mustang has that. It's extra cost on this GT version, and we do have it here. Ford adds a further drive setting for slippery roads, and also a custom setting configurable via a My Mustang section of the centre screen, which you bring up by pushing this pony button on the dash. Behind that custom mode can lie your favoured suspension, steering, stability, exhaust and instrument cluster display settings. You can also tweak steering feel separately. Delve deeper into the My Mustang section and you'll discover further settings tools like a shift indicator to set the transmission's RPM shift point and launch settings so you can set the launch off rev level. The screen can also deliver a little set of auxiliary gauges and a further rev matching feature which provides a heel and toe driving experience, predicting shifts and, as you shift to a lower ratio, quickly raising the engine RPM to that new gear. There's also an acceleration timer allowing you to time sprints to 30, 60 or 100 miles an hour, as well as an eighth and a quarter of a mile. And conversely, a brake performance feature that allows you to measure stopping time from either 80 or 100 miles an hour. Some of this stuff you'll need a racetrack or an airfield to properly get to grips with, at which point there'll be all kinds of fun features you'll be able to safely play with. A lap timer, of course, and there are dashboard settings for drag race and track race starts. On that subject, if you don't mind burning the expensive rubber, you'll like line lock, which locks the front brakes while allowing the rear wheels to spin without moving the car, so conditioning the rear tyres to better spit you off the line. You can also pretend you're Steve McQueen through racetrack hairpins by using drift brake, which allows for handbrake turns by locking the rear wheels when you pull on the strange feeling electronic parking brake that Ford's added to this Mark 7 design. Unless you do happen to have easy racetrack access, we can't really see the point of paying the extra for the uprated Dark Horse model that we mentioned earlier. That variant gets enhanced oil and diff cooling, a lightweight radiator, a Torsen limited slip differential and standard Magna-Ride dampers. But for road use, it doesn't deliver much that you don't already get from this GT version. What else? Well, in true American style, this S650 era Mustang is a great long-distance car, especially with the Magna-Ride adaptive damping system fitted. Urban manoeuvring, of course, isn't its forte. The turning circle's vast and all-round visibility's restricted, especially if you ignore this fastback coupe body shape and choose the convertible version, vision in which is pretty limited with the roof raised. That fabric top model has an old-fashioned roof that you have to slow right down to walking pace to activate, but it's quite quick to operate, the electric mechanism occupying up to 12 seconds, but requiring you to manhandle a rather cumbersome latch to either lock or unlock the hood to the top screen rail at either the end or the beginning of the process. Still, old-fashioned values are what Mustang motoring is all about. The US Navy once ran a recruitment advert that summed it up in a nutshell. The Beach Boys, apple pie, the '67 Mustang. 3 things worth fighting for. If you love this Ford, you'll still feel that way. As we said with the previous generation model, you don't have to be a committed petrol head to know what this car is. In fact, Ford is so confident in the global recognition this model enjoys that the word Mustang doesn't appear anywhere on the bodywork. It helps, of course, that this iconic shape has been seen in so many films and TV shows, most memorably, of course, the Bullitt movie and that car chase with Steve McQueen. This kind of instant recognition is priceless, explaining why Ford has been so careful to keep the shape and style of the original 1960s model while bringing it right up to date in this S650 7th generation guise. The heritage here might well be over half a century old, but this modern Mustang looks as fresh and timeless as ever. If you happen to be familiar with the previous S550 6th generation model, you'll quickly note that this is more of a heavy facelift than a new generation redesign. But why fundamentally change a winning formula? The glass house and the roof are exactly the same as before, as are the quite substantial dimensions. The 4,810mm body length is a full 230mm longer than the kind of BMW M2 potential owners might also be considering. It's longer than a BMW M4 too. In profile, the look remains distinctive, the rear haunch is now even more prominent. The wheels are properly big too. 19-inch rims are standard on all variants and can be finished in black or, as here, in bronze. They gain the black Brembo calipers that come as part of Ford's UK market standard performance pack. We think this fastback coupe model is more iconic with its raked roofline and sculptured rear shoulders. The alternative convertible version, though, also has a distinctive sense of style with unique rear wings and a flatter boot lid that together create a pleasing profile when the roof is down. That soft-top model's roof mechanism remains a bit old school, though, requiring manual latching and a couple of plastic trim panels to be clipped into place to properly finish a retraction process that takes 10 seconds. The front is where you'll find most of this S650 era model's visual updates. Triple LED headlamps glinting at you from beneath the chiselled brow of the redesigned bonnet, which retains its raised centre section and classic central twin power vents. This more three-dimensional grille is new too, with its familiar galloping horse badge. Get all of this bearing down on you from the fast lane and you'd move over pretty quickly. The rear looks familiar too, with a set of restyled yet traditional-looking Mustang tri-bar LED tail lights on a boot lid pressed into a V-shape. A boot spoiler on this extended deck differentiates the Dark Horse version, giving owners something to rest their Budweiser on at Owners Club events, but this shape doesn't really need embellishment. A little twinkling jewellery is quite nice though, so the way the headlights and tail lamps do a little animation as you walk up close is a welcome added touch. Will it all be as recognisable inside? Well, let's take a look. It's here, apparently, that the main part of the update budget was spent, and the effect is certainly more modern, but rather less evocatively original. The previous model's classic symmetrical dashboard with its central vents and twin hooded cowls has been unsentimentally dispensed with in favour of the kind of large double-screen dash-top panel that almost every brand seems to be adopting these days. As we'll see, clever graphics in this digital amphitheatre attempt to regain some of the retro vibe, but you might think that something's been lost as part of this modern transition. Arguably more significant than all of this is the improvement in cabin quality, though you still wouldn't mistake this for the interior of a premium German branded rival. But maybe that's part of its appeal. Ford says the cockpit is more driver focused, and to get you into the Mustang mood, there's a thicker rimmed, flat bottomed steering wheel, silver pedals, carbon fibre style fascia trim, and a big red starter button. Make sure you complete the effect by budgeting the extra Ford wants for these near-essential Recaro sports seats. There's also a full-width soundbar for the 12-speaker Bang & Olufsen surround sound audio system that Ford's decided to include as standard. The configurability of this 12.4-inch instrument display is perhaps our favourite added touch. Choose between a whole portfolio of so-called cluster themes. With these, you can not only vary screen layouts and match these to chosen drive modes, but you can also create an instrument screen evocative of previous iconic models of the 60s, classic dials, the 80s, Fox body gauges, and the 90s, SVT Cobra dials. It sounds potentially quite naff, but actually looks great. There's also a track format with a horizontal rev band, but most formats have twin dials between which you can choose what to view. A trip computer, a fuel economy meter, tyre pressures, a gauge summary, or a driver assistance graphic. Even more graphical wizardry, created apparently by Ford's partnership with Unreal Engine gaming software, resides on this customisable 13.2-inch Sync 4 central infotainment monitor, which of course can do a lot more than was possible with a previous generation screen. The usable part of the display isn't quite as large as the screen size suggests, because a large band on the right-hand frame is taken up with shortcut buttons for settings, features and apps, and there's a further broad lower band for climate controls. As is the current trend, the usable part of the screen is divided into customisable widget sections. We've got navigation, audio and phone settings here. It's the My Mustang screen section you'll be using most though. Your interface for all the powertrain and handling configurability we've briefed you on in our driving section. This pony button on the centre stack offers a shortcut connection to this exhaustive setup menu with its track apps, auxiliary gauges and screen colour options. Around the cabin there are a few things that aren't ideal. What looks like a manual handbrake lever is in fact an e-brake switch in disguise, which does take a bit of getting used to, and whoever decided that these cup holders should go directly behind the manual gear stick clearly hasn't often used the aforementioned manual stick. The Recaro seats we mentioned lose the heating and ventilation you get with the standard sports seats, and only the base has power adjustment. The instrument stalks feel cheap for such an expensive car, and your over-the-shoulder view's hugely compromised by the sloping roofline and big rear pillars, plus that huge bonnet makes it hard to judge where the front of the car is. So you'll be needing the standard sensors and rear parking camera. Aside from the shallow and fairly useless door bins, it's a fairly practical cabin with a big glove box and an illuminated lidded stowage area between the seats with a coin tray and a 12-volt socket. A recess at the base of the centre stack has another 12-volt socket plus both USB A and C ports, and Ford hasn't forgotten an overhead sunglasses compartment. If you've forgotten your shades, you'll also like the way that the sun visors have little tilting edges to better keep out the blinding rays. Right, time to take a seat in the rear. Now that's not especially easy because the catch for pulling the seat back forward is awkward to reach, and when you use it, the seat doesn't automatically slide forward as it would perhaps in a European rival. So you've got to fiddle about with these seat base buttons. Getting in is also a little awkward thanks to this low roof line. And once you're in place, despite the fact that this car is about the same length as an old Ford Mondeo, you'll find that there's virtually no legroom at all unless the person in front of you is less than averagely tall. As an adult, you'll be dangerously short of headroom too. If your point of comparison is the cramped conditions you get in, say, a Toyota GR Supra, then this won't bother you. If you come to this car from a rival BMW M2, though, you might be less forgiving. Whatever the case, kids may well see things differently. We've found that they absolutely love these close-fitting individual seats, sculpted as they are tightly around this large transmission tunnel. Parents will also be pleased to note that ISOFIX child seat mounts and proper three-point belts are included. Getting a child seat in, though, would be a real challenge given the restricted aperture available to you once the front seat is folded forward for rear access. Finally, let's deal with boot space. Now, you might expect it to be restricted in this regard with such an uncompromising sports car, but think again. True, there's quite a high loading lip and the opening is fairly narrow, but you can't argue with the amount of space that stretches way in front of you, given the inevitable limitations of a car of this kind. This fastback coupe model will hold 408 litres in what the Americans would call the trunk, fractionally more than you get in an M2, so you'll be okay with a couple of medium-sized suitcases. Unfortunately, Ford has omitted tie-down points and there's no handle to pull the boot lid back down once it's up. But you do get some extra space beneath the boot floor because no spare wheel is fitted, just a rather fiddly tyre mobility kit. If you need more room and you've got a fastback model like this one, it's possible to fold forward the 50-50 split rear seat so longer items like skis can be accommodated. Though unfortunately, to release the seat back, you have to go round and awkwardly reach into the car as no catches or pull ties are provided in the boot area for that purpose. The convertible model won't give you this option, but it can still swallow 332 litres of cargo, roof up or down, just enough for a couple of golf bags. As we filmed in spring 2025, pricing for this Mustang was starting at around £58,500 for this GT model, which is the one you have to have if you want the option of finding £3,500 more to change from this fastback body style to the convertible version. In either case, you have to find £2,000 more if you want to upgrade from the 6-speed manual gearbox we have here to the alternative 10-speed automatic. Other markets still get the 4-cylinder EcoBoost engine we tried with the previous generation model, but for the UK, Ford now limits sales to the 5-litre Coyote V8 that most customers want, which now puts out 446 PS in standard form. With the Mustang, Ford has a long history of producing uprated and more track-tamed versions, and that continues here. From the launch of this 7th generation model, the brand was offering a fastback version of this car in dark horse form, with more circuit-orientated handling and a slight power output increase to 453 PS. There's a big price to pay for that though. A Mustang Dark Horse with a 6-speed Tremec manual gearbox cost nearly £71,000 as we filmed. Again, you can pay £2,000 more to have the 10-speed automatic. As we filmed, Ford was talking about possibly importing more powerful Shelby-tuned versions, and had already announced the ultimate variant, the Mustang GT-D. That's not a diesel, of course, in case you're wondering, but a real supercar version of this Ford with a supercharged 5.2-litre V8 developing 815 horsepower and 900 newton meters of torque. A real collector's item at a real collector's item price. Think around £315,000. At launch, the GTD lapped the famous 12.8-mile Nürburgring Nordschleife racetrack in under 7 minutes, averaging an astonishing 118 miles an hour around the 73 corners. But let's get back to the real world and the kind of Mustang that you might be able to consider without a sizable lottery win. A car like this one. It's hard to think of a really direct rival. Perhaps BMW's M2 is the closest option, with rear-wheel drive, 480 horsepower and a price tag of nearly £69,000 as we filmed, but that's a slightly smaller car with only 6 cylinders. There's also Toyota's GR Supra, priced at only around £1,000 less than a GT Mustang, but that Toyota has only 340 PS to put through its rear wheels. Or if you want a convertible, that model's BMW clone, the Z4 M40i, which costs only a little more. Otherwise, for other options, you'll need a lot more. A Lotus Emira, for instance, in comparable 3.5-litre V6 supercharged 405 PS guys, cost around £92,500 as we filmed, which is more the kind of money you'd need for the kind of BMW M4 competition or Mercedes AMG CLE 53 that'd be closer in size to this Ford. So we can see why you might easily conclude that there's nothing quite like this Mustang. So how well is this 7th generation model equipped? Well, pretty well, as you'd hope. After all, the asking price is around double the starting price of the previous generation model at its launch back in 2015, and well over £10,000 more than the asking price applied to the updated version of that V8 model we tested back in 2018. In return, this GT comes with 19-inch painted alloy wheels, silver triple LED headlamps with welcome and farewell animations, a GT body kit with black door frame mouldings and GT front grille, LED rear lights with sequential indicators, selectable drive modes and adaptive cruise control. There's also keyless entry, a rear view camera, rear parking sensors and power folding mirrors. Inside with GT spec, there's black sports seats with leather central bolsters, plus heating, ventilation and power adjustment. The cabin also gets a 12-speaker Bang & Olufsen surround sound audio system, electronic automatic temperature control, a wireless charging mat and a 12.4-inch instrument display viewed through a heated, flat-bottomed sports steering wheel. Media stuff's taken care of by a 13.2-inch central touchscreen with connected navigation and 5G connectivity, plus wireless Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. Mustang owners also get useful Ford Pass Connect smartphone remote access, which includes features such as remote vehicle start and stop, door locking and unlocking, pre-start time climate system control, a vehicle locator, and vehicle health and status checks. A newly added Ford Pass function is Stolen Vehicle Services, which provides 24-hour support in the event of theft. If you feel minded to stretch up to the Dark Horse version, then as well as the engine and handling modifications, you get standard Magna Ride adaptive suspension and a body kit with a bespoke front grille, a unique aluminium design for the 19-inch wheels and dark colouring for the quad tailpipes and the triple LED headlights. Inside, the Dark Horse model is set apart by a unique blue-stitched Dark Horse branded steering wheel and deep indigo upholstery with Dynamicus suede-like inserts. Right, on to options, and we'll assume you've chosen this GT version as it's the variant most customers will want. There are two key things you need to look at first, and which customers will be looking for on your car when the time comes to sell. We've got them both here. First, for £1,750 more, there's the 4-setting Magna Ride damping system, which comes with pothole mitigation, useful to protect those big wheels. The Magna Ride system monitors and adjusts itself thousands of times per second to improve stability, comfort and control. And you should also consider the grippier Recaro seats, only available with this fastback version, though it might seem painful to have to pay £2,000 more for these than have to do without the standard heating and cooling functionality you get with the chairs of the standard model. Otherwise, it's all down to aesthetics. This test car's bronze appearance package adds that colour to the wheels and badging. The alternative night pony appearance package adds black colouring to the wheels, the mirrors, the headlamp bezels, the badging, and on the fastback to the roof. You could also pay another £1,000 more to have the 19-inch wheels finished in forged aluminium, maybe also with the optional red painted calipers. But bear in mind that unless you choose the only standard bodywork paint shade, solid Oxford white, you will have to pay your Ford dealer more for your choice of exterior colour, quite a lot more in the case of the metallic vapor blue finish that we have here. It's one of 3 new colours added for this 7th generation range. The others are blue ember and yellow splash. As for drive assistance technology, well, there are the expected next generation Ford driver assistance features like pre-collision assist, a lane keeping aid with lane keeping assist, lane centering assist, a blind spot information system, cross traffic alert and braking, wrong way alert and hill start assist. As you'd hope for this price, you also get driver alert, exit warning and speed sign recognition enabled speed limit assist. Take a deep breath here, because as expected with the V8 Mustang, you're going to have to pay for your pleasures. The combination of nearly 1.8 tonnes of curb weight and a normally aspirated 5-litre engine couldn't really deliver any other kind of result. The efficiency figures are much different from those quoted with the previous Mark 6 model, and as before, they're similar regardless of your choice between manual or automatic transmission. This time round, they see this fastback V8 manual coupe manage 28 mpg on the combined cycle and 275 grams per kilometre of CO2, or 278 grams per kilometre as an auto. Inevitably, it's fractionally worse than that if you go for the heavier convertible at 27.4 mpg and 280 grams per kilometre as a manual, or 282 as an auto. For the Dark Horse fastback model, the readings are 27.2 mpg and 279 grams per kilometre for the manual version, and 27.4 mpg and 282 grams per kilometre for the auto. With either body shape and either engine, we've struggled to get much above 20 miles per gallon with reasonably spirited driving. Sometimes with particularly spirited right foot thrusts, you'd swear you could see the fuel gauge actually dropping as the car surges forward. Before the engine start-stop cutscene at traffic lights, there's the feel of £10 notes being consumed as the V8 throbs away in front of you. Even if you drive carefully at a cruise, you'd struggle to get more than around 300 miles from the 61-litre fuel tank. It doesn't have to be like this. In the past, Mercedes, for example, has proved that an equally powerful V8 can produce returns considerably better than that. Surprisingly though, by segment standards, this big V8 Ford's fuel showing is pretty much on the money. A similarly performing 6-cylinder BMW M2 manages up to 28.2 mpg, though it's a bit cleaner with emissions of up to 227 grams per kilometre. What else? Well, bad news first. That CO2 figure puts this Mustang into the highest VED Band K, which will see a first-year cost of £5,490 with £600 payable annually after that. And insurance is Group 44 for this GT Fastback, Group 48 for the GT Convertible, and 46 for the Dark Horse Fastback. On the positive side, residuals are quite strong for a Ford. This fastback Mustang is expected to retain around 56% of its value after 3 years and 36,000 miles. It's 53% for the convertible and 58% for the Dark Horse Fastback. Maintenance might be pricey because servicing visits will need to be quite frequent. You're supposed to have to visit a dealer every 12 months or every 10,000 miles, whichever comes sooner. To help you budget ahead for this, the brand offers a 3-year Ford service plan with a 7,000 annual mileage limit, which costs around £1,000. There's the usual unremarkable 3-year, 60,000 mile Ford warranty, and you'll have the option to extend that package for up to 2 more years and up to 100,000 miles at extra cost. I know you're no good for me, sung Martha Reeves and the Vandellas from the back of a Mustang convertible on the Dearborn production line back in 1965. And a Mustang may not be. But if you yearn for the days when affordable sports cars were all about power, thunder and tyre-smoking machismo, you're going to want one of these just the same. In this car's performance sports car segment, something like a BMW M2 or perhaps a Toyota GR Supra is a very nice thing to have, but it'll never be the model you always promise yourself in the way a Mustang can be. This is, after all, more than just a sports car. It's the heart and soul of Ford. As for this Mark 7 model, well, for Stang enthusiasts, there's both joy and sorrow here. Joy that against the current zeitgeist, Ford has seen fit to extend the life of its iconic sports car, and sorrow that this is almost certainly this Mustang's final curtain call, in combustion form anyway. If Ford had been serious about continuing this model line with the kind of feel and bloodline an enthusiast would recognise, it would have created a properly new design for it, the brand's latest CD6 architecture that underpins the current US spec Ford Explorer was ready and waiting for just such a thing. But what brand could commit to that in a market turning to hybrids and EVs? As it was, Ford might well have ended Mustang coupe and convertible production completely, but didn't want to quite yet because the old S550 era 6th generation version sold so well, becoming the world's best-selling sports car. So we've got the facelift, which you may or may not think does enough to deserve its claimed Mark 7 status. But at least we have it. At least you can still buy a proper Mustang. And at least the pony car story will have one last chapter.